All right,
So,
being
let me know
nine,
for voters.
being 9:15, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, Avang.
Here.
Collins.
Here.
Doherty is out of town. Gingrich.
Here.
Nowak.
Here.
Scala.
Present.
Mr. Vicek.
Here.
And I'm here, Mr. Kurtz. We have a quorum. Do I have a motion for the minutes approval for the August? Mr. Collins, Mr. Vicek seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Public comment, did we have any?
No.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, there is.
There's me.
Sorry, we forgot about that.
Mary.
Oh, they can talk about me behind my back, but they can't talk to me.
Well, wait a second, go stand outside the door here for a second so we can talk about it.
Already done. Do you need me to stand up there?
For the microphone.
Oh, really?
I'm just saying.
Well, I can move if you don't.
No. My name is Mary Donner. I live at 2536 Verdi Street in Woodstock, and I'm here to talk about your vote last time on the MC ride and the P-tax referral on free rides. I know that's a difficult situation. I've worked for PACE for a number of years, but I am a private citizen. I've retired, so I feel I can speak out on the needs and wants and all that kind of stuff of what PTAC does and MC-RIDE has done for the last 13 years. But let me preface any conversation from this. 2.5 years ago, COVID hit, and it affected everybody all over. There were people not being able to get to jobs, essential workers who made no money to begin with, couldn't get a ride. PACE, Metro, and CTA offered free rides for a number of months. Number one, to keep their numbers up. You don't want to lose ridership. And number two, because those were essential riders. You have students who need to get to school. You have people, 50% of the people who take MC Ride work. They aren't making a lot of money. There's nobody in the world who wants to take a bus. They can take any other kind of transportation. A go-kart would be good if it was on time. I'm really very serious about that. Dial-a-Ride, which is the predominant source of transportation in McHenry County, is like every other county, not as effective as fixed route is. We don't have the population. So it's always going to be a problem of how many buses do you have, how many drivers do you have, how much money do you have. If there is a way that anybody can vote in favor of some kind of restriction for this year, seeing as how there was a $200,000 bump in transportation that PACE got to bring here, maybe it should be used here. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, move on to member comments. Mr. Vicek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Just want to make a comment on Los Angeles, California's fire department has developed, and through a manufacturer, they're using their first all-electric fire truck. And while the cost is higher than a typical fire truck, they are anticipating that as more purchases are being done, the price of the fire trucks are being reduced. Because of the size of the equipment, I would then suggest that, or at least assume that as the industry now is focusing on more electric, that you'll start seeing that for heavy equipment that would be used by our DOT department. So I wanted to bring that up as a consideration for the DOT in the future as they start negotiating for new equipment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Okay, anyone else?
You know, I just have to say something because it's funny, on the way here, I'm listening to the radio and I heard that Ford Company is spending $700,000 or $1 million, I'm not sure, $700,000 on updating their plants in Kentucky for the Ford truck, the Super Duty, I believe they called it. And they said they were spending all this money for updating their equipment because there's such a high demand for the gasoline engine, because the electric vehicles haven't been able to perform at the same level for the farmers and the contractors, across the country. So Ford feels that there's a huge market in the future for the gasoline. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other member comments? Seeing none, we'll move down to the routine consent agenda. Any items members would like to pull off? Mr. Scout?
2.
Which ones?
2.
Oh, just 2.
I'm not difficult.
Okay,
15? Oh, 15. 5, 15.
just 15.
And 23, 523.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Do I have a motion to Mr. Scala?
I'll make a motion to approve all of them except for 2, 15, and 23.
Second.
Mr. Vichek seconds that. Proceed to roll call. Avang,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Gingrich,
Yes.
Nowak,
Yes.
Scala,
Yes.
Vichek,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. 5.2, Mr. Scala, make a motion to accept it.
No.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Nowak moves to approve it. Michelle Avang seconds it. Okay, Mr. Scala.
So, this is my annual too much salt thought process. So I realize and I appreciate the fact that you cut it down to 4 versus 9, but you're saying that we have 2.5 that we still gotta take. You said our dome is full, so that's 6, correct?
6, yeah.
So that leaves us 8.5 correct for this season.
Correct.
Okay. And our usage has been for the last 3 years,
Below,
huh?
below our average of 9,
But what is it been?
like 5 and 4 over the last 2 years.
So I know the almanac said that we're supposed to have a snowier winter. It did, I get that. But, so I'm just trying to understand, and I know that we haven't been paying for storage where we have in the past. So that's appreciative that we haven't had to, but I'm still even questioning the wisdom of 4 based on what we potentially will have and our past usage. And I know prices are higher because of transportation, so like if you, this would not be the year to theoretically buy salt because transportation is through the roof right now.
Right. From an operational standpoint, theoretically, we'd like to have a 2-year supply on hand at any one time. If we go back, the last 3 years, we had minimal compared to our 9 average.
Yeah.
But you go back to 13-14 winter, you're talking 16,000 tons, and we don't have it. We wouldn't have it. So.
Well, and that goes back to our whole storage issue, which we've been
Right.
talking about for
Right.
many years. So, and I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right.
If we had the capacity,
And ideally is you wanna finish your season out with that dome full, so that you're ready for the next winter. With construction going later and later each year into December or whatever, it's hard to get the trucking. We actually placed an order in March, for 1,500 tons. We didn't get all 1,500 tons in March, because they ran out, all the truckers went to we're just trying to do our due diligence, making sure that we have enough materials on hand for whatever reason.
Okay.
How much do we have of the alternative to salt? Is it like beet juice or? How much is used of that versus the salt that's necessary?
Last year in liquids, we used, about 550,000 the last 2 years in liquids. And it's basically salt brine and the beet juice.
So you need a mixture of the salt and
We utilize that, yes, we do. The beet juice is really, it's got sugars in it, being an ag product, and it gives you that, you spill a Coke on the kitchen floor at home and you don't clean it up right away and it's all tacky and sticky. So that we are adding it to our salt that we're actually putting up, coming out of the truck too, because you want it to adhere to the middle of the road, because studies have been done where you can lose up to over 30% of your salt will go off to the shoulders, which doesn't do the driving public any good.
I guess so if we didn't approve the, I know like Scott said, from 9 to 4, if we didn't, we would have 1 year of reserves or 1.5 years.
We don't even have 1 year.
You wouldn't have any reserves.
No, and Ed's point with it is if we have a year that's worse than what it is, we probably won't have any left. And we've been, as a county, when those years that Ed mentioned, when we've had severe shortages, we were fortunate to get salt. And we paid $225 a ton, something like that. It was over 200, wasn't it?
No, it was like 129 or something like that. But that still was significant compared to.
So the problem is if you're not ordering it now, you may not ever get it.
But we have no reserves at all right now?
We do, we've got a full dome right now. But if you got a worse winter, we're gonna go through that,
Our average winter is more than what our dome can hold.
yes.
Okay.
That's really the crux of the problem. We don't have capacity to store what we really need to store. And if we never get another dome built, that would solve a lot of issues.
Right.
Mr. Collins.
Speaking of another dome, has there been any movement on that, down on,
Exec session,
Rack Road?
exec
We're going to
session.
exec
Oh,
session today.
Colin.
Spoiler.
sorry.
For a later discussion.
All right.
So, but I get, I appreciate the fact, but there's nothing written in here that says that if we don't use the 4, that they're willing to store it for free again. That's my concern. I mean, the 1 year, I know, I roll your eyes at me, it's okay. I get it all the time. It's just, I don't wanna pay money to store it and just because we don't have the adequate facilities to,
It's only happened once, as you mentioned, and that was because of the board imposing the fees on the company for delayed delivery.
but it still sucked.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not recommending that we don't buy salt, that's not my point. My point is for the right number, that's all my point of my discussion is. And if everybody else thinks 4 is the right number, then I'll shut up.
Okay. Anybody else then? All right, we'll proceed to vote, I guess. There's no further discussion. You don't want to do anything?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
You gotta still vote though.
Let's start off with Scala.
Voting?
Yeah?
No.
Nowak?
Yes.
Vichek?
Yes.
Gingrich?
Yes.
Collins?
Yes.
Avon?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes for good measure. All right. 5:15, Do I have a motion for 5:15?
I'll move.
Mr. Scala moves. Bob,
Second.
second.
I'll second.
Mr. Nowak seconds it. And Mr. Nowak, you pull it off?
Yes, the only reason I pulled this, I just have a question, and it relates to finance, and maybe Well or Joe. I agree we need to buy the trucks, you know, for future and for the need. And the question I have is, are we financing these, or are we purchasing them outright? And does it matter at this point? It seems to me when I read this, it's just the purchase. It has nothing to do with financing.
You are correct.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's basically
Good question.
the question I have.
John?
And from the earlier conversation we had, right now, we're probably only gonna have the funding to purchase 2 out of the bat, right? May have to look at the third one at the end of the budget year next year, or we're gonna be purchasing all 3 at the start of 2023. What's the plan of buying these?
Our plan would be to buy them when it comes to, once the budget is approved for December 1st.
So the budget will have in there capital dollars to buy 3 snowplows.
We're making that assumption.
That goes to tomorrow's conversation.
Okay.
So I guess the further question is, if not, would you buy 2 and then maybe lease the third if you could do it that way if you had to?
Well,
Or
my
purchase
question
it.
is, the resolution is
Financing.
calling for approval to
Financing.
purchase 3 snowplows. And the question is, we're gonna approve that, but that may change based on the conversation tomorrow, what happens with the budget.
Well, I think if we were to approve him purchasing 3, and he only gets appropriated enough funds to purchase 2, he's only gonna purchase 2.
Right.
It doesn't matter how many we say he can purchase, if he doesn't have the money, he doesn't have.
That's why I just want to get clarification.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and remember, there is other equipment that we're bringing forward also.
I understand, I
And that's
understand,
still-
I understand,
right.
I understand, okay. All right.
I think one question open is we went to the 3 to turn over some of those really old trucks to get those eaten up. How many years are we into that plan? Is it 3 now?
This would be the
This will be the
4th year.
4th year.
Yes,
So this is the 4th year of approximately, we said 10,
right.
to do that. Because if you set this back a year, now it compounds itself.
Right.
So, okay, that's all I wanted to clarify.
I'm good.
And are we, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Tom?
I was gonna ask if, I guess maybe how necessary these are? If we didn't do the 3, could we make do with what we have?
You can always make do. It's gonna cost you more in the long run, period.
Well, currently it's gonna cost us plenty right now, right? Because
Right,
we're looking
but-
at transportation as being an excessive cost at this moment, so maybe it doesn't cost us more in the long run if we hold off.
Well, it's gonna cost you more than likely in level of service, because we've seen parts go down because the number of parts are needed because the equipment will break down. Our level of service will go down because you won't be able to have a truck on the route. Our routes will get longer, so you will pull them off of other ones. So that was the reason when we had went to this, is the county board made that decision before, and we were having a lot of issues.
So if we don't do the 3 plow trucks, or the 2, depending on the budget.
Right.
Then you're saying that that would mean that it would cost, excuse me, we would have a detriment to the routes, and you're saying it would take longer because equipment potentially could be in
Right.
service?
Right.
Well, potentially, everything could be in service. So I'm thinking that if we could hold off on the purchases now, when costs are so high, that would make more sense to me. If we could make do 1 more year and then talk about purchasing transportation units, when the numbers aren't so excessive. If we could make do, as you mentioned, we can, so I just wanted to clarify.
I think that goes to Mr. Scala's statement of if we don't approve it in the budget,
Yeah,
you're gonna make do with it,
yeah, understood.
unless you're creative in one way. So,
So are you planning, so you place a purchase order December 2nd, and you don't get delivery until next fiscal year, are you planning on just appropriating the funds and then we'll have that so that you
As part of the encumbrance,
Yeah.
all those dollars are rolled over from one fiscal year to another.
okay, all right,
Mhm.
okay.
To Mr. Scala's point then, if we put an order in December 2nd, when would we get the units?
We don't know.
So, I mean, technically, we might have to wait this winter anyway.
We're waiting still from the ones that we placed last year.
Okay. That answers my question then.
But,
Year out.
yeah,
It's even
and that's
further.
even with us, there's a risk that you gotta take with it. If you don't do this and we place our order and get your place in line, you would even be further out.
But right now, we're currently waiting on 3 units that we purchased last year?
Yeah,
Oh, well.
and that's something that we always do. That's one of the reasons why we bring this resolution forward so
Okay.
early. So as Mr. Scala said, once we go into the new fiscal year,
Mhm.
we place that order December 2nd or whenever the system, the new budget is entered in.
Mhm.
We get that out, purchasing gets that out as ASAP. So the goal is to get it before the next winter season.
But we're still 1 year behind on the
Right now, we are because of what the supply chain issues are. Yep.
It sounds like
That's
we're gonna
crazy.
get 3 trucks eventually, so maybe we don't have to say yes right now to something that we might not get for another year and a half. Okay, thank you so much.
Can I ask a question? Did we finance those yet?
It's already
No,
been part
we
of the
didn't.
budget. We don't.
It's part of the budget, yeah,
No,
So we
when you
can
say
count-
finance, it's outright purchase, just like these.
yeah, but we haven't spent the
Right,
money because we
right.
don't have the trucks.
We haven't taken delivery.
So we could possibly defer that even to financing those. And we could borrow money or, just finance those vehicles from last year, because that was probably $1 million too, right?
Mhm.
So that might save money for this next coming year. Or spread it out over the next 10, or however they, finance it.
Well, that money that's what is meant by the encumbrance, that's already been appropriated. So when you start the new fiscal year, those dollars roll over.
Yeah.
Nothing really to finance if we can't get the units.
Well, until they come, yeah.
But those are appropriated from last fiscal year's budget, right?
Right.
So that money is already earmarked.
Yeah,
It's earmarked, but it can be restored back into the new budget.
right.
Or we could vote no on the trucks now and know that last year's was already appropriated.
Yeah. Well,
Once we get the units, hopefully, this year.
Well, I think, the trucks, they're probably gonna take a year. I know, I bought a pickup, I waited 7 months, for that. He said, you're gonna wait probably a lot longer. Bigger truck, I think it'd take him longer. So. But,
So you just compound the problems if you delay.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
We just compound our problems further if you delay. Get them ordered, if it doesn't come to the next fiscal year, at least you're in line instead of 2 years out, and then now you're 9 trucks down.
Well, the hope is, if we wait another year, that the inventory would now be restocked and that the cost would be lower, because right now, obviously, the demand is so high. So if we waited and put it off, then the demand, hopefully by then, would be lower, and the cost would be the same, lower.
No, but you don't end up with, if you delay it, you don't order 3 trucks this year. If you go no on this, you don't order 3 trucks. And whether it catches up or not at some point, you're still behind 3 trucks in your turning over. The reason we went to this, part of the reason we went to this, we had a truck, how many years ago was that? 4 years ago? We had a truck that the bed actually fell off in the middle of the intersection because they're so rusted out, this older equipment. So you need to get it updated. So that's why we went to the 3.
Yeah.
Was because of that. And we really, if we can prevent going out of this cycle of 3, because every time you change something like that, it compounds it. So pretty quick 3, all of a sudden you're gonna need 4. And then we're really gonna be out. That would be my argument on this.
Are the trucks built to order? Or are they, Tiny has a question, do they land up being in stock, so to speak? Or are they always?
We don't know, I don't assume that they're in stock.
Well, I think what you're asking is, are they customized?
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
are they a standard truck that, state of Illinois and other municipalities use?
Is
No,
it a
they're-
special order, kind of?
So,
They bid on what the specs are, we got these specs from where?
But now,
Benel, right,
right.
and that stuff for what we need, so they are built for what our needs are.
okay.
I guess it sort of just comes down to like spending money when we still don't even have the order from last year, it seems. I know you're saying compounding, but hopefully the inventory is rejuvenated next year, and then we get all 6 at the same time as opposed to appropriating it now in this budget. We could appropriate it to 24.
But you've got, Michelle.
Looks like, excuse me, Adam, our purchasing manager, wanted to say something.
Oh, I didn't see you back there.
That's all right. No, I spent 10 years in public works, so I've got a soft spot for these guys, but
Oh, now we know
there is
why.
no inventory.
That's why he
Right.
wants 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, look,
No,
Sorry.
Come on up.
Come on down by Mike, so you can talk to the
How you
mic.
doing, Ed? That's fine. I'm not sure exactly where to start, but there is no inventory. These trucks are not special order. They are all standard specs, but because there is no inventory, if we drop the order, there is no going to the back of the line. You are dropped out of the line. We learned this last year. These trucks are built. They take a long time. They're very specialized. They don't have the parts. This is one of the most chaotic situations right now is these plow trucks, because they have to outfit them after they get them. At Bonnell, JX Truck has been the one telling, is it Peterbilt's?
Yes.
Yeah, these trucks don't go down in price because the federal regulations is you're getting these ultra low sulfur diesel and all these things every single year. They're adding more to these trucks. They're making them more complex. They're making them less serviceable and more complicated. The price always goes up. It doesn't come back. I've never seen them go down. Even if there's been a low supply. Right now we have no supply. So it's a budgeting question notwithstanding, if you don't place an order for these trucks, those 3 trucks that they have on order from last year will show up at some point. But if you don't place an order, you're out at least a year. There will be no truck for you. They will drop you from the list, and they won't manufacture a truck. They're only taking orders for confirmed purchases right now. So if you don't order them, they just drop you. You won't get a truck. You have to get back in line a year and a half, 2 years, whatever from there. So I apologize, but
No, thank you.
that's
Thank you.
some of the chaos we're seeing, at least on our end of purchasing and trying to get these trucks, and talking with JX and talking with Peterbilt and Bonnell about and not just the trucks, but some of the implements that go along with as well.
So when you say that we're off the list if we don't, you're only talking about these trucks, not the ones we have already placed, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vijay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I'm reading the resolution background, it says the new trucks will be placing the 2009, 2010 trucks. The annual maintenance for trucks is approximately $10,000 per year, with a combined estimated auction of $20,000. I think the general public reading this resolution might sit down and look at this and say, well, it makes sense for the $10,000, and so as such, $10,000 we could save this. The problem that occurs is that as I read this, it doesn't point out that we would fall off the list. And so I think in the future, as a suggestion, they may simply point that out, because the general public reading the resolution, and as Member Gendich had pointed out, well, why not just keep it? It doesn't point that out here. And so somebody might sit there and say, well, I'll spend $10,000 to maintain my vehicle that's worth $100,000 or whatever it might be. It makes more sense. So as a suggestion to putting down the background, I think that would make it a lot easier for people to understand as constituents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Okay.
One more question. What if we just put an order in for one truck? Can you add more if you're on the list?
As long as the purchase is approved, yes, you get on the list.
If it's
So
approved.
if I'm
So
saying,
when I-
so if you order 1, 2, 3 trucks,
Yes.
1, 2, or 3 trucks will go on the list for next year. If you don't order anything, that's when they drop you off the list. But you can't come back and say we want 1 truck and then, you know, July say, you know what, we're gonna get 2.
Did you say you can or cannot?
You cannot do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
And they all won't come in the same week either.
Right, no, of course not, no
If
way.
you order 3, you're not gonna get all 3 at once, most likely.
No.
Do you have any idea at all when they're going, like, any idea?
What's the latest they're saying?
The cabin chassis, for the last December's order are scheduled to be built in April. So that's just the cabin chassis, then they gotta go to Bunnell. So we may not, you know, we'll be lucky if we see them for the following one. We're definitely not gonna see them for this one.
Thank you.
So you're almost 2 years out then. Okay,
Some glue in there.
all right, with no further questions, last call, we'll proceed to vote. Ms. Aving,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Gingrich,
No.
Mr. Nowak,
Yes.
Mr. Scala,
Yes.
Mr. Vicek,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. All right, that motion carries. Now we have one left, which is 523. Mr. Collins moves, Mr. Scala seconds. Who pulled this off?
I
John did.
John.
Just a couple questions coming out of the meeting today. For my clarification, you had mentioned, and I just want to make sure I had this right, there's 3 types of quick takes? Or there's 3 types of, go ahead.
Property acquisition.
There are 3 types of acquisitions.
Okay,
There's what's called a fee simple acquisition, where the agency or entity acquires the property's title in full, they own it.
okay,
Another level of acquisition called a permanent easement, where the property owner maintains the underlying ownership rights, but they've granted a specific easement to an entity. Most of the time for us, it's a drainage easement.
okay,
The third is a temporary easement, in which for the length of the need of the project, you do some level of work on a particular parcel, but the underlying ownership, again, stays with that property owner. Those are typically for grading, shaping some dirt, detention pond work, or other things like that.
And all 3 of those are subject to the quick take process?
Correct.
Okay, okay, that's right, I think there's some confusion. And then the people that have been notified, they already know which one of the 3 acquisitions you're gonna do for that particular property?
Yes, in the notice that was provided, there's a description of whether it's for temporary purposes or not.
Okay,
The actual letters that go out, we're not super specific to each individual property owner, but there is a notice. As we move forward with the land acquisition phase and make offers and begin the appraisal process, which should happen in a few months, those levels of details get conveyed to the property.
okay, okay. And at this point in time, because of this quick take process, we would not anticipate any of that delaying the project moving forward on the timeline that gets established.
That's the goal of the quick take process, is we're able, if we don't settle with the property owner, that's our first goal, is coming up with an agreeable acquisition price, because we don't want to burden the court system if we don't need to. But if we are not able to come to an agreement, then we leverage this process, the eminent domain process. And quick take allows for us to get the title earlier in that legal proceeding, then we can move forward with the project. The county typically has eminent domain properties or acquisition abilities. However, you don't take title until the very end, which means we hold up the advertisement and bidding. And in some projects, it could take years that the public is incurring inflationary prices of that construction project waiting for that final parcel. Quick take allows us to take title earlier on while still settling coming to an agreeable price for the property owner.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's proceed to vote. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Gingrich?
No.
Mr. Nowak?
Yes.
Mr. Scala?
Yes.
Mr. Vichek?
Yes.
Ms. Avang?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay, carries. New business, staff recognition.
We have 2 recognitions today for the committee, and who wants to go first today? Bobby? Ben?
Yeah, sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bob Hensel. I'm the road maintenance supervisor here at the Division of Transportation. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Justin Hildebrand. He's the newest staff member here, and he's been assigned to the road crew. Justin is originally from North Carolina. He now resides in McHenry, Illinois for the last 15 years. Before coming to us here at the DOT, he previously worked for Michael's Pipeline, where he worked on the Minnesota 3 replacement line, as well as the Bakken expansion. Justin graduated from McHenry High School in 2010. And then in his spare time, Justin enjoys duck hunting, fishing, and spending time with friends and his family. So, please join me in welcoming Justin to the DOT.
Anything you want to say, Justin?
Did he come with
No,
a?
I'm good.
Thank you, Justin, and welcome. Ben?
All right, thank you. I'm Ben Justin. I'm the shop supervisor here at the DOT. I have the pleasure of introducing our Q3 Employee of the Quarter, Carl Spielman. Carl has been an integral part of the DOT maintenance shop as well as the DOT as a whole, from regularly scheduled preventive maintenance to timely repairs on breakdowns. He keeps our light-duty fleet running in top form. Without any formal training, Carl spends his time between projects and waiting for parts, researching online training, as well as using colleagues and other industry professionals' experience to hone his craft, while also offering his previous experiences to assist in training new staff as well as summer interns. Not only is Carl an excellent mechanic, but he also has a passion for researching parts, which helps the county save money with different vendors and finds parts that aren't easy to come by. This summer, Carl had designed an odd-size rim for our vegetation trailer that had a special order axle come in that was not the same as the original. Carl is very deserving of this recognition. Congratulations, Carl.
Anything to say, Carl?
No, just thank you for the award, and good to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, any awards?
Nothing on awards?
Okay, now the draft 23-27 transportation presentation.
So we've got PowerPoint for you. John Paul is going to lead us through this. It's going to be, won't be too long, the presentation, so we can cut it down. Just
We're going to go through 515 pages.
Well, good morning. I'll be providing a brief overview of the fiscal year 2023 to 2027 draft transportation program. The county is tasked with prioritizing transportation projects to ensure that the public's tax dollars are spent in an efficient and impactful manner. Historically, the county has chosen to place the highest priority on preservation projects, ensuring that roads and bridges are adequately maintained and safe for public use. Once those preservation needs are met, the county then looks at modernization projects which improve the operation of the existing system without necessarily adding new capacity. And then finally, remaining funds are programmed towards expansion projects. So this particular chart, which is included in the draft document, falls in line with that historic approach to programming projects within the overall 5-year transportation program. And then this slide displays the anticipated revenue for the duration of the 5-year transportation program. This program is also a way for the county to ensure that adequate revenue is available to accomplish transportation projects in a timely fashion. It is anticipated that the county will receive approximately $142.5 million in transportation revenue over the lifetime of this 5-year transportation program, and that equates to approximately $28.5 million a year. Those funds will then leverage an additional $94.79 million in federal, state, and local funding for projects. The county's revenue sources are derived from a mix of user fees such as state MFT allotments and the local option MFT, and non-user fees such as transportation sales tax and 2 property tax levies. So these revenues can be added to our available fund balance and allocated to projects in the county's 5-year transportation program. As a reminder, the DOT carries a large fund balance, but also has encumbered a significant amount of funding on projects, both those in the past and upcoming. Growth in fund balance typically is attributed to a variety of factors, such as a result of conservativeness with programming in past programs, saving up for projects such as the Randall Road project, as that's a significant project attached with costs, and then also revenues being more than anticipated. An example of that is additional funding that had become available through the state's capital program. However, even though there may appear to be a substantial fund balance, projects which are going through implementation stages incur purchase order encumbrances for which those financial commitments draw down from the overall balance that the DOT has. Shown in this chart are expenditures sorted by program type and funding source. I'd like to note that some of the work that the county does, such as maintenance activities and pavement preservation, is entirely locally funded by the county. Other activities, such as repairing bridges, adding capacity to our system, and providing public transit services, allows the county to leverage funding from state, federal, and other partners. This chart shows expenditures over the 5-year period by project. Approximately 43% of the county's expenditures can be attributed to project types, pavement preservation, and ad-lane projects. Together, these 2 project types constitute nearly $86 million of the county's $200 million in expenditures over the next 5 years. The program also does provide a map of where each of the projects identified in the 5-year transportation program will be located, and funding and projects are distributed through every county board district. We've also gone in and identified projects that were added since the last program was adopted, and primarily these are bridge projects and public safety projects. And what is done with these is they're added into the program where needed, but then also from a fiscal constraint standpoint where they can be added either in earlier years in the program or out years in the program. But one goal of this particular process is to get some of these projects in the pipeline so that they can go through the various phases of initial study, engineering, and then eventual construction. We've also gone through the document and updated projects that carried over from the past program, an example, multi-year projects, and updated their particular revenue sources, anticipated revenue sources, and expenditures. And lastly, there are a few engineering contracts which have been added to the 5-year program, which will assist in delivery of the projects identified in the document itself. In terms of next steps, the program is available on the McHenry County DOT website. That actually was posted late Friday afternoon. Comments for the program are requested by October 14th. Staff will then review any comments that came in and coordinate any modifications with the program, with MCDOT management, and then as appropriate, the document will be updated. The final draft of the fiscal year 2023-27 5-year transportation program will be brought forth to the Transportation Committee at their October 26th meeting for discussion and recommendation. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Beechey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we go back to the chart that had the districts? It would be, yeah, thank you. Included in all these 6 county board districts. I'm not clear on the 6 districts. How did you lay that out since we have 9 districts? Is there overlap? Is something?
The 9 districts takes, it's my understanding the 9 districts takes effect next year. So we just had it.
I see. I apologize.
Yeah, the 6 is what it's currently today.
Okay, and so as such, I'm just looking at 14, because I represent District 1, I'm just interested in looking at District 1, apologies to my peers for other districts. The Route 14, the green area, that's Cary Algonquin Road, I assume that will be that, okay, so that's a multiple issue. And that will help the Conservation District, because that'll be right there near the river, so. I see, okay, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
And next year, we will reflect the new district map on this map you'll see here next year, for next year's program.
Okay, because the budget, because it was 23, that's the reason why I'm thinking to myself, why didn't that reflect?
I think we even did a map showing the new districts as well, but we decided to show this one today. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you. That went quicker than I thought. Old business, staff report.
We just got one real quick update from Daryl to keep the committee aware on the Johnsburg Road Bridge project.
Thanks, Joe. This will be super short. Just we've been touching every time of where this bridge is moving through the process. We are currently advertising for the advanced materials contract to have a manufacturer create the new box beams to be used on this bridge. We have a bid opening scheduled for October 5th. So it's in the works.
All right, thank you. Mr. Collins.
And this was the idea to get that started before some of the others. You're not following the traditional path right in this, right? You kind of move that forward a bit to try and keep things moving quickly.
That is correct. It's a 4 to 5 month lead time to order, procure the materials, make these box beams. So we're trying to overlap our design component. We know what box beams we need, get that ordering process so we can put them in place sooner.
Thank you.
Sorry, we do have one other update from the PTAC also.
Yeah, so last month at the committee meeting, there was discussion about the $200,000 one-time contribution from PACE. We heard you loud and clear that you wanted us to take a look at some other options, so we have been working with PACE staff about what some potential options could look like. We also invited PACE to be here today with us in case there were questions that were more directed at them instead of DOT staff. But Jasmine, do you want to give a brief update on where we're at today, or if there's questions, we can help answer those as well too.
Yeah, as Scott has noted, we're returning today to revisit the conversation on how to expend that $200,000 for MC Ride. TC requested that we come with PACE representatives, and they're here today, Gary Scott and Edward Gallagher, and also requested that we propose any other recommendations. So we returned back to some of the initial proposals that we had brought up several months ago, including extending our hours of operation. Currently, MC Ride operates from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., so after hours would provide riders additional times from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. But again, because this is capped at $200,000, any of these recommendations do not currently offer any permanency. So we're looking at any of these initiatives being for the calendar year of 2023. So the goal of today would hopefully be to come to a decision on how to move forward with those dollars and coordinate further. But yeah, if you'd like to open it up for questions for ourselves or for PACE, we're here today.
And just to go backwards one sec, so at PTAC, the reason that they preferred the free fare for 2023 was because you're not taking anything away after the $200,000 is expended. You're simply just not collecting fare for a year. Then it reverts back to the way things have always been. The reason that they didn't prefer the extended hours of operation was you would be extending it for a year, and then you'd be taking it away from them at the end of that year, if the decision was made to remove that going forward. So I think that was PTAC's rationale about why they recommended what they did. But again, as Jasmine said, we don't have a lot of other options to spend down this money. And we feel as staff that extending the hours of operation would be probably the easiest thing to do to spend down that PACE money quickly next year. So at that time, I mean, at this time, that's kind of what we're recommending that we would move forward with. But we'd like to hear your thoughts, and if there are questions, we can direct those at PACE today.
Mr. Collins.
A couple questions. The first one is, I think, remember from the last meeting, one of the issues right now is driver availability.
Yes.
So we're not doing the number of rides that the public would like to be doing. And one of the questions came up, if the $200,000 is not fully used, would that money carry over to the next year? Did we get any answer on that? Or is it all or nothing?
No, if the 200,000 is not used, it still stays with the DOT. It can be expended in future years. At least that's my understanding at this point in time. Yeah. So Gary and
Yeah, they're here. Why don't you ask?
well, and I don't want to put Gary or Ed on the spot, but
That's right.
why don't you guys come up here so you can look up to the table. So Ed Gallagher, why don't you guys introduce yourselves as well?
Ed Gallagher, I'm the Community Relations Representative for PACE Suburban Bus. I cover both Lake and McHenry County.
Hi, my name is Gary Scott. I'm the Senior Project Manager in Paratransit Services, and I monitor Lake McHenry, Kane, and the call center in Lake and McHenry in North County. So, and to answer that question, yes, that would be able to be expended into the next fiscal year.
So it's not like we're time limited. We need to spend it down by X date. We have some time to spend it down. It's our estimate that if we were to extend the hours of operation for the service to be even till, let's say, we went from our current 6 a.m. start to 11 p.m., that would probably spend down $200,000. We would assume even just extending it 4 hours into the evening would probably be in that $200,000 range for the entire year.
So, you said that extending the hours would be the easiest approach for DOT versus free?
Well,
So-
the reason, well, no, free fare would probably be the easiest.
Okay.
But we already heard from the committee that's not something we want to do next year. The reason I say hours of operation is easier from our end and probably from PACE's end is because they can't add more buses to the program during the peak hours, right? They're capped at their certain number of buses that they have and the drivers that they have. However, from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., they don't need as many drivers, they don't need as many buses on the road because there's less demand for transit during that time. So it's from our end, it's as simple as keeping a few drivers on the road from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. That's something that is feasible. It would cost money, but it's not like they would have to hire more drivers to do that. They would just work them longer into the evening. You would work that out that way. So from a feasibility standpoint, that was sort of our understanding of that option.
Do we have an idea or sense of what that volume might look like from 7 to 11? Do we think there's a demand for it?
Yeah, Jasmine's looked into sort of the bell curve of when we get rides throughout the day, and there definitely are tails at both the early morning and the late evening. To answer your question, there is very little demand after 7 p.m. But for those that would like to use it, it would be a great benefit for them. If they have a job that gets off at 7 or 8, now they can get home at night versus bumming a ride from a coworker.
Do we, in other counties, do they have extended hours like that? Do you see good demand there?
It's probably a similar demand in other counties throughout the region. I know we've done some preliminary work on projections, and one of the counties, they suggested having, I believe, 1 or 2 more vehicles on the road during those hours. So I think that would be in line with what the DOT would be thinking for that expansion over the 4-hour period.
Okay.
And it's our understanding that both Ride to Kane and Ride to Page, they're 24 hours a day. right?
They are 24 hours a day, and they have less demand during those times as well. It's mainly during the peak times, and just to kind of piggy off of what Scott was saying, we are still working on recruiting drivers with our contractor, First Transit. It is a very difficult, challenging time with the nationwide driver shortage, and we are able to work with our taxi providers as well to provide some assistance. But you know, I constantly am monitoring to see how we can increase capacity for the program, especially in the peak morning and afternoon hours.
Mr. Beecher.
Thank you,
Are you
Mr.
done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding if we go for the extended hours, one possibility, instead of reaching out to individuals and putting in a newspaper, may be to go to businesses that have a second shift, and just simply saying, this could help them with the recruiting and getting more people that would be available. So I would make that suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Scally.
So one of the things that we had brought up as a committee was, are we able to utilize the dollars to try and, because what we heard was that you couldn't find a driver, so we were turning away services because there wasn't drivers to actually drive the buses. So, and I don't know if it was myself or someone else brought up, are we able to utilize some of those dollars to incentivize the drivers so that you can get drivers so we can actually give the services that we're trying to give? So whether it's a stipend or whether it's an increase in hourly wage or whatever it is, to try and utilize that.
So I'm not sure if you want to speak to that, Ed, or I can speak to it.
If you want to.
I know that there are internal discussions around that and working with our contractors regarding that. It's really contractual things. One other thing I'd say is that we are working on incorporating and integrating a TNC. It's called UServe. It's similar to Uber and Lyft throughout the entire region, and it will be available based on the amount of TNC drivers that are available in the area that will be able to take trips, and that's, I believe, open to all rides. So that should assist with some of the capacity concerns that are existing right now. So, but I know we are actively hiring, trying to get people. It's really trying to just, you know, keep drivers, get them in the door, and once they're there, they're providing a great service. You know,
I will say also, First Transit has instituted a sign-on bonus for transit drivers here in McHenry County. So they have instituted a sign-on bonus that is pretty sizable in my opinion, and it's active throughout the end of October. So that is now.
It popped up on my Facebook feed.
that's good.
And I'll point one more thing out, Mike. The cost for the drivers is passed on to PACE, who then passes that cost on to the county already. So if, without, independent of the $200,000, if we ask or if we push PACE to increase the driver wage or give more incentives, that cost will ultimately be borne by us and PACE collectively through higher monthly invoices from PACE. So we can do that separate from the $200,000 discussion. Have that discussion with PACE.
Well, but I think the concern of the committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the concern was, we have a program, but we don't have the drivers to be able to fully implement the program that we already have. And so the people that really need the rides, we're not able to provide them. And so the thought was, if we can utilize this $200,000 to actually get the people that really need the rides, that's better use of the dollars outside of expanding or, you know, doing something else.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's very challenging in recruiting drivers during this time, but we are actively working with our contractor to bring in more drivers for our contracted services bus, for taxi, and then we're going to be working with UServe as well, the TNC, to bring on additional capacity. So I know I just spoke to our contractor yesterday, and there were 2 people that were being interviewed, someone in behind the wheel training, so hopefully that assists with some of the capacity that's needed at this time. But we are implementing all the efforts that we can to help with this issue.
are, as a county entity, are we allowed, able, however you wanna look at it, to offer higher incentives to do the work here in McHenry County versus Lake County or DuPage or Kane or wherever? Are we able to differentiate, I guess, is my question.
The only difficulty with that is that the drivers out of the McHenry garage serve both Lake and McHenry counties, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Gary. The McHenry call center, which is where also the garage is, where all the buses are housed, people will come there, they'll hop in a bus, and then they will hop between the two services. And so I don't know if Pace could split out and just give incentives for people driving in McHenry versus in Lake, because it is a coordinated call center and garage.
Right, I would say that the predominant number of trips that are being provided there are for McHenry County, and we have the Barrington Dial Ride as well that we service out of that garage. So, which also can go into parts of Cook County and Lake County, and even MC Ride, you know, the straddling communities that are on the east and south, and maybe that sliver of Barrington as well. So I would say that internally at Pace, that's I think more of an internal discussion between Pace and the contractor who we work with on that. And I will say, from my knowledge, there are discussions going on with that. So to help incentivize getting more drivers. So, but during this time, on-time percentage has been very high. We've been able to provide great service, very low complaints in the region overall. Once people are in the McHenry region overall, once people are on the bus. So,
Mr. Collins?
So basically, we have to figure out how to spend $200,000, either add service or do something with the current service. Nothing, can't spend that money on trying to add drivers or incentivize the adding of drivers.
I think it just gets too messy
Okay.
if we're trying to incentivize drivers, because that's really Pace's domain. That's not
Right.
the county's domain.
Okay, just want to clarify that, okay.
And I think, so the two choices, basically, if you're going to extend the service time, that will end when the $200,000 is gone.
It could end. That's up for this committee to decide a year from today, right? So every year we bring forward an annual IGA that lays out the hours of operation. Next year, we could be sitting here and it worked out great. We served X number of more people, and you say, let's add it to the budget for next year, for 2024's budget. That's entirely possible.
So basically, we're under two things here, and that is just give the free rides and be done with it, because they've agreed that it'll extend out further than a year if you don't give away those rides. That kind of answers the question of people who aren't riding, or if they don't have drivers, that money could extend out further. We've already got the money, if I understand.
Correct.
Okay. So it's not like it's an IOU.
No.
Okay. So I guess they're still looking for a directive from this committee if we can get a consensus here.
Next month, we'll be bringing forward an IGA with Pace for service in 2023. That IGA needs to clarify these type of items, whether it's the fare or the hours of operation.
So basically, I'm going to ask the question, two choices here. Make a choice one way or the other, what you guys are thinking. Do we extend, or do we do free service with the 200,000? Or do we extend the time?
I don't like
And
this.
your time was 7 to,
Well,
or
I
7
propose
to
11 p.m. would maybe be a good middle ground. Instead of going 24 hours a day, 11 p.m. might be a sort of a halfway measure.
My fear of this 7 to 11 p.m. halfway measure, you're gonna have a lot of guys sitting around not being utilized. You're paying people, whereas you could actually provide the free service for the people who are utilizing it.
Well, unlike the township programs that you're paying a driver whether they're given rides or not, our program is a little different, where if nobody reserved a ride at 10 p.m. one night, there is no bus on the road. We're not paying anybody for that. There is a cost to have a call taker at the call center, and things like that. But if there is no demand, Pace would if there's one person that wants a ride at 11 p.m., they'll dispatch a taxi for that person. They're not paying a bus driver. They're not paying a bus to be on the road. We can sort of rev the demand accordingly for service. Versus a township and a lot of the municipal programs, you have to have a bus on the road just in case somebody calls. We're a little bit different that way.
And I can piggyback off of that as well. We pay for the revenue hours, so the amount of the amount of time that the driver has the rider in the vehicle or is like headed to get the rider from like the last pickup. But it's we're not paying for extra service. We're not paying them to sit around, I guess.
Would there be less likely rejected rides availability? You know, driver, if you've got a guy and you got one driver, would you possibly reject that person or more likely to pick him up?
If we say our service hours would be, if the service hours extended to 11 p.m. and somebody wanted the ride at 10 p.m., we would provide that ride.
So that would,
Either through a taxi or the bus,
Yep.
depending on what their need is at that time and what Pace's availability is at that time.
I guess what I'm trying to tie into is right now we have service not being provided because of lack of drivers. Would the service actually be increased for those people at that time frame? So maybe people are going to want to go shopping at 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Potentially, yeah, because don't forget, when somebody calls for a ride at 6 p.m. today, there is no option later than that, right? Or 7 p.m. There is no lot, but maybe if somebody calls for a ride at 7 p.m. today and our hours are till 11, Pace might say, well, we can't give you a ride at 7, but we can give you a ride at 8 or 8:30. And they might say, okay, that works for me. You know, I'm going shopping, I got nothing else to do. So I think indirectly, Jim, it would increase service in that way on the tail.
Okay, Tanya?
So, and I appreciate it because Scott, you sent over the McRide trip denials year to date. So when I'm looking at this, we have almost 16,000 trip denials for 2022. So how long would it take to implement that program that you were mentioning with the, potential agreement with like the Uber or the Lyft or something like that? Because in my mind, it would make more sense for us to hold off on spending anything, whether it's time, or extended time or whatnot. And when people call, they call the call center, and if they get an adversarial or a cap denial, then we say, okay, your second option is this, and we spend that $200,000 on getting just the ride, no matter how it funnels. So, but if you're telling us, Uber and Lyft contract would take, 5 years to implement, then that's probably not an option. So,
And what I could speak to now is with UServe, the TNC provider that's like Uber and Lyft, and we're working with them now in conversation to get that, service provided. So that will probably be, late fall, early winter, and getting that in. And I think it is important to also, when looking at denials, to kind of looking at the different types. You have capacity denials when the service isn't
right.
Available, and then you have adversarial, which is when a rider might ask for a time and then they aren't offered that time, so then the call center offers another time that might be available. And a lot of times the rider does accept the alternative time that's proposed.
Sure, and I understand that, but I guess my question is, if we can implement the program late fall or early winter, then we have a call center that can say an adversarial denial, here's the time we can do.
Yep.
And they say, no, that's definitely not gonna work. Or a capacity denial, and it's like, sorry, we don't have the capacity. Like, then we would utilize the $200,000 until we spend it all just for Uber and Lyft.
I wouldn't be able to speak to that. I think that would have to be something that's directed from McHenry County DOT.
And don't forget that UServe pilot that Gary just mentioned, that's a region-wide program where PACE is working directly with UServe to provide these trips. There is no county role in any of that program that Gary just mentioned. That's going to happen with or without our money, is what I'm saying. So I'm careful not to conflate our $200,000 with things that they have ongoing at this point in time. And I will mention we have a few PTAC members here in the audience today, so I wanted to just give them an opportunity if they wanted to comment on anything we talked about here today. They're welcome to do that as well.
Mr. Collins.
I'd support the 11 o'clock for a couple of reasons. One, I think the $200,000 would provide a study, basically paying for a year-long, potentially year-long study on what is demand. We may be surprised. You know, we may be surprised at the amount of people out there that are looking for trips like that. And if it helps us move people maybe from 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, that helps overall with the service levels. Because there might be people coming home from work and want to go shopping. Okay, well now you go at 7, you can still do that. Those opportunities may be there. I view the problem as providing free rides. That money's going to run out. It could run out in August. It could run out. I mean, you may have an idea, but I look at that as a PR nightmare. Because I call up Monday and I get a free ride, and I call up Thursday and I'm told now it's $2 or whatever the cost is. Well, why? And then there's a whole explanation that's got to take place and go on, and that's going to be multiplied multiple times during the day, because that's what's going to happen. It's going to be free one day, and you'll be paying for it the next day. And I think that's where the challenge is going to be. And then you're going to be able to come back to us at some point next year and say, hey, we had X amount of rides between these hours, and this is a benefit to the community, and we recommend that when we spend the money to do this. So that's what I would support.
So just to your point, when we look at these eligibility denials, it says that these occur when someone calls for a ride that has one or more legs of the trip outside the service area or outside the service operations. And when you look at the trip denials, 378 of them are based on that eligibility. All the rest, out of that 16,000, are all based on adversarial and eligibility. So capacity. So really, we might not be doing anything but for 378 rides, I guess.
You're correct in everything you just said, but I would just caution, people know what our hours of operation are very public, they're posted, people know not to call if they need a ride at 8 p.m.
That's fair too.
So we don't really know what the demand is, to Member Collins' point, until we actually offer it. Or we do surveys to businesses and things like that. Paying for data is a great thing to do. We've done that in the past. We would collect a year's worth of data and be able to make a better decision at this time next year on what the hours should be for the program going forward.
That's my thought.
I originally, before you answered some of those questions on the 6 to 11 or 7 to 11, before I was for the free rides, but then when you answered those questions about they're not just sitting there, it's kind of on demand. It makes more sense to me I agree with you, John. Mr. Beach?
I would also support the idea of extending it to 11 o'clock. The free rides, people, short-term memory would sit there and say, I was getting free rides, now all of a sudden I've got an increase. I think this would be better for businesses, for individuals, for the environment, if nothing else. So I would support the 7 to 11 extension.
I saw Michelle nodding yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll go along. I thought the same as you, Jim. I thought at first the free rides would be better, but it does make sense
Yeah.
to try to see what the
Okay.
need is after 7.
So we got 5 of us.
I just wanted to clarify, we cannot use the $200,000 for the Uber or Lyft program.
We could if it was entirely, it's my understanding, we would have to lead that as the county. That would be independent from PACE. It's not like we can subsidize what they got going on their end. This would be, we could do an Uber and Lyft program ourselves, directly with Uber and Lyft.
With the 200,000.
It's my understanding that would be an eligible expense, yes.
But you have to coordinate the calls then.
We-
You have to
we-
pay someone to do that.
We'd have to create our own infrastructure.
We'd have to create our own program from the
Sorry,
ground
Pete.
up.
What was it? I'm sorry.
We'd have to create our own infrastructure and program for delivering that.
So you can't use the same call center.
No.
Well, don't forget, Uber and Lyft, they don't use call centers, right? Everything's app-based. So
Sorry.
we actually met with Uber yesterday as staff, and we talked through what a program could look like, either through PACE or through ourselves. And if we did it ourselves, it would be truly something that was just between the county and Uber. Maybe they, again, this is all, there's a million different ideas out there, different communities that are trying different things. We could give a $5 subsidy for certain individuals for their Uber trips. But then who would determine the eligibility? So we would have to somehow have a system in place where Jasmine would certify, okay, you are eligible for this Uber program, you are not. Unless we want to open it up and give everybody an Uber subsidy in McHenry County, which is also an option. But it just creates there's a snowball of questions that come up next if we take on that responsibility ourselves.
So we already have the call center in place. So if I call and I get a denial for any of those 3 reasons, then is there a way where there's like a mechanism where PACE says, this person contacted us, here's some code of some sort, and then we put in then they contact a separate number and say, hey, this is the code, that means we contacted PACE, we don't have a ride, here's your option, you're out of options, therefore you contact the county and you get the Uber ride and you can use the $200,000. Because in my mind, the whole point of this is to get more access to rides.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So with extending the services, we're not necessarily guaranteed we're gonna be providing more rides. But if we say you're gonna get a ride no matter what, whether it's through the PACE program, and if that's denied, then here's your secondary option, then we're always providing rides.
I think we could definitely instruct the call center to direct people who are denied rides to Jasmine, who could then set up a program to give them a subsidized Uber ride. We could do that. That is theoretically possible, but again, that's staff time. That's a bigger commitment than just paying PACE to do something. The extension of hours is PACE sends us a higher bill every month. We pay the bill. This program is much more involved from a staff standpoint. So I'm not saying we couldn't do it. It is possible, but that would be direction I would need from the committee.
And 16,000 phone calls. It's Jasmine.
Well, technically, if you want to get nitty gritty, it would be 8,000 phone calls because you have to get 2 rides. But the whole point of the program is to give people more access to rides. Extending service hours, we absolutely cannot guarantee we're giving more rides. But if we have a program with Uber and Lyft, to spend that $200,000, we guarantee more rides.
Okay. Mr. Scow, what do you think?
Well, P-Tech wants to talk.
Oh, you guys have something? You come on
Yeah,
up.
just real quick, we both just real quick.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah Schrempf, I'm the Executive Director at Senior Care Volunteer Network. And my participation on P-TEC is to keep into consideration the senior riders of our county. And a couple of the things I want to point out as you're making your decisions is that the majority of our riders are during the day for medical appointments, many of which are mobility impaired or need handicap accessible vehicles. Our transportation program, because our drivers utilize their own vehicles similar to Uber and Lyft, we fill that gap, but for handicap accessibility, we refer to MC Ride because that really is one of their only options. If they live in one of the townships that provide transportation, they might be eligible for that. But otherwise, all the other areas of the county, we do refer out to MC Ride. Many of our rides that we sometimes have to refer are 5:30 in the morning because that's when dialysis starts. So if you're considering time expansions, that might be something to consider as an earlier maybe than a later as one point. And then the other part of it, you were talking about kind of a test. So on the $200,000 to provide free fare, that's a test too. It'd be interesting to see how far that money takes you with all the current ridership as well. Who's riding? Is it going to bring on more riders? Is it going to just make the fare free for the current riders? So that's could also be considered a litmus test to overall ridership. So that's my 2 points.
My name is Kim Hankins, and I'm the Director of Sustainability.
Oh, wait 1 second while we take care of that.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's a lot of messages.
My name is Kim Hankins. I'm the Director of Sustainability at McHenry County College, and I've been on the P-TEC committee for quite a long time, and I'm delighted to be here today to chat with you guys a little bit more about this kind of complicated issue because there's so many things things to think about. I wanted to just address something about, you mentioned about a PR nightmare. I think you're gonna run into that no matter what you do, whether you do the free day or because it's still gonna be cut off. My concern, and kind of to echo a little bit about what Sarah said, is you're gonna reach out to a population that needs rides at night. I don't know a statistic, but a lot of that population is gonna be a marginalized population that's gonna learn to depend on that ride very quickly. And then all of a sudden, again, it's gonna be cut. And then that's gonna come back to you guys to be looking for money to keep that program. It just seems like the circle is going on. So I agree with Sarah that I would just ask you to maybe think a little bit again about that fair holiday. I think it can be spun, outreach, posters, whatever, as a holiday. This is an opportunity for a lot more people to try it out. I know I've talked to students here and there, and they're like, well, I don't really understand the program, and I don't really get it. And so there's obviously some education that I need to do at the college to help the students understand, but I think the opportunity of being able to try it out, see if it's free, and then again, keep some data. One more point I want to make, and I promise to sit down, is that I'm a strategic plan girl. I love them. I like to write them. I like to read them. I know it's crazy. I looked a little bit at the county strategic plan, and I think that fair holiday really checks off a couple of your boxes. Obviously, the environmental sustainability one, getting cars off the road during the day, during rush hour when those are really, really difficult areas. I'm sure you guys know this, Henry County has a really tough problem with air pollution right now. And then my second point, obviously, Sarah mentioned this too, the health and social services. Again, you're just getting the handicapped folks, the senior folks, the students, those folks that don't have those opportunities. So thanks for the opportunity to chat a little bit more.
Thank you.
Just had one question when she mentioned 5:30 dialysis. Does that mean that we're not able to provide those rides at this point because we have a 6 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
That's right.
That seems like.
So quite a few of those?
I'm sorry, what?
There's quite a few of those dialysis points?
Well, we seem to have quite a few of them. We have about 180 rides a month.
And it's a growing population too, right, Sarah?
Yeah, and we can't fill them all, which is why Senior Services and Associates takes on some of those. We work in collaboration with them. Yeah, it's growing. And also too, I didn't know if you knew this, but Northwest Medicine did discontinue their medical service, their buses. So we have seen an influx of enrollees in our program, and since August 18th, we did 20 in the last 3 weeks, just new enrollments for seniors because that bus no longer operates. So it is that discontinuation of that program is starting to trickle over into the other transportation areas as well. And hospital tests and things like that are also pretty early in the morning.
So a 5:30 appointment, you'd have to start the service at what time?
Well,
For
we do
most of them.
5:30 pickups for 6 o'clock dialysis, so I guess
Oh,
they
pick.
would start dialysis around 6, so it
It's
would be
hard to
prior
start
to
at
that.
Thank you.
That's
So-
harder.
So maybe we look at different hours.
So, yeah, is there any reason you couldn't move those hours a little bit and
Not at all.
service more of them?
No, not at all. I think it's a great idea to maybe start an hour earlier or 2 hours earlier than we typically do today. A 5 a.m. start might make a lot of sense. And then maybe you only add 3 hours on the back end, or you could still add 4 hours. I truly think adding 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., you're going at, for an entire year is going to be substantially less than $200,000. If I had to guess, I think you're probably in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $150,000 to add 4 hours of service from 7 to 11. Adding 5 to 6 a.m. might get us closer to that $200,000 cap. But again, this is all speculation until we actually have it operating.
Now, grand experiment, as Mr. Collins phrases it, kind of. If we succeed, if this program showed that it warranted, now we come back, they've given us the $200,000 the first year. That program ends, now that $200,000 would become 100%. If we wanted to continue it, that would fall upon the county totally, or would Pace.
So that would be the negotiation in the IGA.
And the IGA splits the cost for every hour of service 50-50 between Pace and McHenry County.
I
So
just wanted to clarify that.
we're still
yes.
only on the hook for 50% of that cost, if the IGA continues in its current form.
So in theory, if we started at 5 a.m., went to 11, and that costs us $200,000 for the year. The next year it costs us $100,000. I'm just using rough, you know. I'm not gonna hold you to it, so I'm sitting next year, I'm gonna say, you said.
These are a lot of things that we would work out as part of our annual
Sure,
negotiation.
sure.
But yes.
But in simple math.
Broad
that's-
strokes, that is
right,
correct.
okay.
So I would stick, in my opinion, I would stick with the extended hours.
The moving the
Adding
hours
the
up.
early, adding the early.
You go into 5 AM or whatever also with it, I would go with that myself. That would be my preference.
So 5 AM to 10 PM, you think?
Whatever they feel is appropriate, 10 or 11. If they think they can do it in that 200,000. That's just my opinion. Mike?
So I agree. I think extending the hours is, to me, a much better option than the free option. I think I appreciate that you guys came today. I appreciate that you guys came because it provided a lot more information for the committee to help us make a decision. You know, I still would like to try and figure out if our staff could work with you guys to try and figure out how we can utilize perhaps some of those dollars to get people rides that need them right now instead of being turned away, you know, because to me it's just, people need the rides and we're not able to give it to them. So I don't know how that works or how that looks, you know, to me, you guys can work behind the scenes to figure that out. But I mean, whatever, if we could use a little bit of that money in order to get drivers to actually be able to do the rides that we need right now, to me, that'd be money well spent in addition to the expanded hours. So it's my only kind of throw-in caveat. I'd still like to try and work on that side of it, because it's just, you know, like Tanya said, so many rejected rides is just, you know, we're not providing the service that we're trying to. And I get the whole driver shortage, but, you know, you'd be surprised how many people will take a job if they're offered another $5 an hour or something, you know what I mean? It's just,
Uber Lyft also has rejected rides also.
well, but even the cost of Uber, I mean, I used to be able to go to the airport from my house for, you know, $55, $60, and now it's $120, you know, because they don't have.
Did you move?
Well, you know, you come from Wisconsin, you know, it's a little bit more.
They have the benefit of being a demand-based system whereby they can charge higher fees. If there's no drivers around, that one driver is gonna get a higher fee.
You got that right.
We don't do that as the public sector.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, it's, everyone is experiencing those increased expenses, and so, you know, it's just, that's my thoughts.
And I hear you loud and clear, Mike. We can definitely continue that discussion with pay staff before next month.
So, are we still on the extended hours?
I think that's what everyone has kind of said.
I think it definitely has to be the 5 AM, because that's concerning, and I didn't realize that the medical transportation
I agree with you
option stopped
100%.
too.
That was a great point. I'm glad they came.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're at
So
a consensus.
consensus is 5 to 10 or 5 to 11.
Yep,
Sure.
you'll see it reflected. We'll work the numbers out. We'll kind of make it fit within our budget, and we'll come back next month with a proposal in the IGA. So, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your input today. That helped. All right, there is a need for executive session
Yes, Colin, now it's time.
for land acquisition. We have a motion to go, Mr. Vichak moves and Ms. Avang seconds. Okay, we'll set up for executive session. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Take a couple second break here. Aye. Let's go back into, we gotta change recordings.
Dan, we're
Are
good?
you ready for recording? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Motion to
I
adjourn.
forgot I
What we got?
do that first.
You gotta go back in the regular session.
Yep.
Go
Said,
back.
we'll
I'll
go
make a
back
motion
and
to
ready.
go in the back into open session.
Tanya seconds it. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, motion to adjourn, Mr. Scala, Tanya seconds it, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Aye, good meeting.
Thank you.
It's only 11:11.